in today's webinar, we're covering a lot of buzz and myths that are going around about sales hiring. And obviously, it's the single biggest determining factor of success in any sales organization, or especially if you're a startup that's building a sales team. Now, recently I was talking to a friend, Sam, and she was hiring people for various sales positions, and she's got a method to, get the interview process going. She brings in a lot of people, tries to identify right people with consultative selling as the biggest skill that she needs in that role. And as she does that, she realized that a lot of bullshit comes her way. She's not able to find the right people, and she ends up spending a lot of time teaching and coaching people who obviously do not have the consultative selling skills in their toolkit. Now, just to avoid that, we thought we'd get Val Gray, who's a behavior architect, on this webinar. And she spent 30 years in optimizing talent hunt and employee performance. She's an excellent bullshit spotter, as she calls herself. And through her company, she helps founders and sales teams use scientific methods in sales hiring. Welcome, Val.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Deep.
So, Val, it's about how do you hire sales guys with 100% confidence and no gut feel? What makes you an authority to talk about this topic?
Okay, so thanks very much. Good question. I've been working in India for 15 years, in the UK for 15 years, all around behavioral assessment. And, what we find is that even if you do know what you're looking for, often the way you actually evaluate that is actually no data, you're making it up, you're having the wool pulled over your eyes, and people are just selling you bullshit. So we want to get that straight. That's the expertise that we bring.
Great. And so in this context, what do you mean by sales hiring with a gut feel?
Okay, so when you have a gut feel, you're using your instincts, your emotions to reach decisions. And this is really important in business, of course. We all use intuition. It's really important. However, if we're just subject to our emotions when we're making key decisions, they may not be very good decisions. Same in any decision making in business. You don't only use your gut feel. You've got to use data. It's the same in hiring decisions. So we need to bring some data into that decision-making process. Let's have a look at an example of what happens when you know it, when you see it. So there's a picture we can look at. There are 4 faces here. And you're a good guy with good intuition, right, Deep? So you can look at those faces and make a gut feel decision. Like, so who's going to be the best salesperson? You know it when you see it, right? So look at the pictures. Tell me, is it 1, is it 2, is it 3, or is it 4?
Putting me in the spot, Val. So
yep.
Trusting my gut feel.
Instant reaction, just an instant reaction.
Maybe 1 or 2. I'm really hoping none of these guys are watching this, but maybe 1 or 2, just because.
Okay. What?
I think they exude a little bit more confidence. Could come across as salespeople who I would like to hire, but just look by the looks. I haven't interviewed them.
Okay. Cool. So see, based on that initial look, you're making some conclusions about those people in those pictures. And this really, just shows us how gut feel works, because what have you based that conclusion on? It's just a picture. You don't know anything about that person at all. In fact, those pictures are just random pictures that we put together for the exercise, right? But still, our brains make decisions about people just based on that first look. Now, that decision you just made is going to bias you towards anything else you find out about that person. So if you think the picture is telling you this person is great, I like this picture, you're going to be looking for other information to reinforce that. Whereas if that's someone that you didn't like, you're going to be looking for other information that reinforces that this isn't the right person. It's called bias. It's called confirmation bias. It's one of the many biases that work when we're using gut feel. And, it happens to all of us. It's a natural reaction, Deep. It's not because you're any worse off than anybody else. It's a human aspect.
So what you're saying is, there's subconscious factors that go in. With this example, I'm just looking at the physical side of things, but even in interviews and other methods, there might be other ways that I subconsciously interpret the answers that I'm looking for and interpret answers in a certain way. But how do you know that gut feel creates problems? Well, as an entrepreneur, I always trust my gut feels. How do you know it creates problems?
See, we know because we've done research on different methods And it's found that, commonly used methods, so, traditionally interviews, CV analysis, references, these kind of things, this is what people are commonly using to make decisions. And we found that the research that we've done about these methods and also other methods shows us that there's a big variance in how accurate the data is that we get. We call this predictive validity. See, what you're trying to do, Deep, when you're choosing somebody is who is going to perform in the role in the future. That's actually what you want to know, not do I like this guy, but who's actually going to perform in the role. So we need to use a method that tells us who's going to perform, not who we like. So these two things are different. And if we're just using gut feel, we tend to choose who we like. We don't really know whether they're going to perform or not. So we can use methods that give us a much higher predictive validity. You'd be surprised to know that unstructured interviews references are around 0.3, where 1 is perfect prediction. So it's pretty poor. You can actually do better just by using, blindly put a pin in a piece of paper. It really doesn't give you factual data. And I'm sure you wouldn't make any of your other business decisions based on that kind of analysis, right? So why do we do it in hiring decisions? It doesn't make any sense.
Sure, I get that, and I think that's where some of the interesting things are going around the internet. Mark Roberge has done a great favor to the community by writing this book called Sales Acceleration Formula, and I love the chapter around hiring methods. He's got his 5 traits sorted out that he looks for around coachability, curiosity, intelligence, prior success, and work ethic, for example, for his team. Might be different from other companies. And so what you're saying is when you are actually interviewing candidates for these traits, the methods that you're using still involve a bit of gut feel through interviews. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, you may have done that work and decided, okay, this is what we're looking for. I need somebody who demonstrates these traits. Great. Yeah. You've done your benchmarking work. But if you're not using the right methods to decide whether what you've got in front of you is actually coachability, then you're still not going to select the right people. You're going to get these false positives and false negatives, which create all sorts of problems. So it's not only about deciding I want these traits. You've also got to then think, how am I going to evaluate whether these traits is what I've got or not?
Got it. And what is the impact of not being able to find guys spot on that match your traits? Especially in sales hiring, what kind of impact do you see if I hire a wrong salesperson?
Oh, disastrous. I mean, so hiring the wrong person, what happens? There are two ways, two things that happen. One is you get the wrong person because you've chosen somebody, selected them, and they don't work in the job. That's called a false positive. Another option is that you don't hire the person you do want. That's called a false negative. So not only do you get wrong people in the job, you miss the right people, and that if you've got a high hit of false positives and false negatives, you're going to have serious impacts on your business. And that's we're talking money impact in terms of financial negative impact on the business that you're trying to run because of these bad decisions.
Exactly, and also especially in SaaS businesses, when you're hiring somebody with a quota of $500,000. The time invested with the wrong hire in trainings for 3 months, and by the time you decide to fire or shoot somebody out, you've probably lost about similar amount of money, $500,000 in training, lost opportunities. So there's a huge negative impact around sales hiring. So how can somebody turn this around, Val? As a CEO or VP of sales, who's got aggressive sales hiring plans, what can I do differently, or what can he or she do differently in terms of hiring with confidence rather than gut feel?
Right. So there are really 4 simple steps. Okay. And I think the most important one, the first one, is so important that we've got to change our mindset. Sales people are generally, not always, but generally are, gregarious, outgoing, strong personalities and very persuasive, good at talking bullshit, and also generally have a lot of ego. And business leaders probably demonstrate all of those characteristics as well. So the ego thing needs to be there because you have to have a lot of self-confidence to set up and run a business. That's got to be there. But the ego can be a negative effect. So it can tell us messages which says, I know what I'm doing. I'm the best person to make this selection. I know what I'm looking for, and I'll know it when I see it. We have to put that outside the room and say, okay, you do know what you're looking for, you are experienced, but you are also a human being and you're subject to personal preferences and prejudices, and you need to use methods which are not going to allow those to creep in. So number one is change your mindset. Recognize you have an ego, don't allow it to influence you, and say, we are going to use methods which don't allow bias. That's the first thing. Be committed to that. The second one then is to benchmark what you're looking for, prioritize it. So look at models like Mark Ravage. We also have some examples. Decide what your priorities are. What are you looking for? And that's each company has to do their own prioritizing. The third step would be use valid methods that make sure you get objective data that don't allow bias. And the fourth step is to put all of that information together to get an overall score. And that's also important, that we can end up with a single picture of an individual.
Great. So the first two things, I get that, the mindset, the ego part, and getting the traits right, like Marsh Ravage did. I actually do want to get into step 3 and 4 a little bit better, and just so that it's not a theoretical outline. Can I share with you an example of what happened to Sam, who I talked about earlier? So
Sure.
Sam actually, runs a team of 9 to 10 sales guys, and for an aggressively growing sales organization. Now, everyone, as she says, she seems to be under the impression that when she's in the interview process, the candidates think that asking the right questions and understanding customer needs is the most important thing to do in selling. Rightly so, if you're a consultative sales guy.
Right.
However, when she is asking candidates to give examples of the questions that they use, right, or how do they demonstrate consultative selling, they give very theoretical answers. So it's basically a lot of bullshit that comes across. So very few people, in her words, understand genuinely what is a consultative approach to sales. So how do you find those guys? Why is it so hard?
People who do.
Yeah, who know this consultative selling and can demonstrate that. And how can you find out through this interview process?
It all comes down to the questioning style. So she's probably asking something like this. In our business, we need people who are good at consultative selling. What would you do in our company if you could get this job? Fair question, right? And you ask, what would you do? Because you want to know what will they do. It's a future tense question because it's a future tense need. But when we're trying to evaluate whether the candidate can do that, we need to look at what he's been doing in the recent past and get him to tell you that. So we need to ask a question that says, in our company, we need a consultative selling approach. Can you give me an example of when you've done that in the recent past? And our candidate needs to say, yes, there was a time 3 months ago, this was the client, this was the assignment, this is what I did, and then you can probe. Now, probing is really important because it helps us dig the bullshit out and get underneath to really validate the facts of what you're hearing. There's a process we call STAR. It's a probing technique, STAR. You can learn it and use it. It's quite simple. It simply says, S means, when was it? What was the S for situation? T, what was the task? What was it you were doing? Notice I'm using the past tense. What were you doing? What was it you were doing? Always past tense. T is for task. A is for action. In that situation, what did you do? Again, past tense. What were the actions? And R, in that situation, when you did that, what was the result? R is for result. So we use these 4 steps to really get the candidate to throw them off that learned answer that they've been practicing, throw them off track, and actually get them to tell you what they really did. And this is where you can check whether they're being true or not, or whether they're just bullshitting you.
Fantastic. So a simple technique, STAR, that you mentioned for probing, and just kind of honing it again, going a little bit historical with the experiences and finding the answers on where they demonstrated those techniques.
In the recent past.
In the recent past. Is there any easy way to do that? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work to learn probing and, go through this technique, though it's a simple model. Is there any easier way to get around with it?
It's tough if you're starting from scratch, certainly, because you have to write all your questions, and so on. So it can be a little tough. So there are tools that you can use that can help you to get you into it. And then once you know what you're doing, you can be a bit more creative. So one tool that we really like to use is where it's a psychometric instrument, and it has your questions as well as the report. So you can actually combine it all in one step. So The tool will help you prioritize first and benchmark, and then it will assess the individual, and then it'll give you interview questions. You don't have to write your own questions. It'll give you the questions in the STAR model, STAR. So you don't even need to learn the probing technique because it's there written in the report. So these are tools that are around now. They're designed for the sales hiring process specifically. They're not the be all and end all. They're not the only answer, but they are really good. And it's an easy way to get into it to start with.
Great. And Val, so just to get a little bit of a certainty in your hiring model, what you're saying is using these tools and tests. Is there any specific kind of companies or any sales teams that this would be more useful for?
It's really up to you to take the generic work that's been done. So you'll see in these tools, there are generic models, and prioritize what you need for your company. There's not one right answer fits all. So out of maybe 5 aspects, choose 3 that are your priorities. Out of 8, choose 4. You know, it's really up to you to prioritize. Okay. We have a little exercise on our blog. If you go to our website, see the blog, you'll find that you can actually use the blog to take you through the exercise to prioritize what you need. And from there, you can go on and use the assessment. So it's easily accessible. Yeah.
Great. So thanks for mentioning that, viewers. So we got a couple of links in this with Val's blog and a guide to STAR assessment, or STAR way of doing interview techniques, which we'll mention in the comments in this video. But Val, thanks. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us. Just to close it off, what I learned really is 4 steps to recruiting with confidence. Obviously, it starts with mindset. And dropping off your ego. So change your mindset. Understand that there's a gut feel involved. Drop off your ego. And second, benchmark the traits and prioritize the traits that you need to be looking for in your sales guys. And what are the other 2?
Then the next one then is to use valid methods and not only one. So 2 or 3 different methods. Okay. So psychometrics, interviews, your CV, whatever. Combine valid methods to get real good data.
Got it. Okay.
And the last one, you've got to have a way of putting all that data together. It's no good having 4 sets of data that don't make any sense with each other. So you've got to figure out what's the overall picture that you're going to create that's helping you decide whether it's going to work or not.
Perfect. Great, Val. Thanks for joining in. I appreciate you sharing your feedback and ideas around sales hiring. And thanks for yours for chiming in as well. Have a good one.
My pleasure. Very, very welcome. And we're very happy to receive any inquiries that come to us to help with this really important topic.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.